Alright, at this point, I have talked Marathon to death. All three games are so similar in the gameplay and their storytelling methods that there isn't a lot left to say that I have not said already. So along with a little bit of a discussion and my thoughts on Marathon Infinity, I also want to take a look at the series as a whole, both past and future. But if you want to hear a more detailed breakdowns on the first and second games, check out the description for links to those videos that I made. And I am going to be referencing a couple of other YouTubers' videos in this video, and all videos I am referenced will be linked in the description as well. A lot of videos in that sentence. So with all that being said, let's slap on our running shoes for the last time for a while, let's run a marathon, and talk about Marathon Infinity in the series as a whole. Marathon Infinity was originally developed by Bungie and Double Aught, published by Bungie, and was originally released on October 15, 1996 for Mac. It was also released for iOS and iPad iOS on May 23, 2012. But of course, I played Classic Marathon Infinity, the version available on Steam. This version was, quotation marks here, developed and published by Aleph One, and dropped on Steam on August 22nd, 2024. And since this is on Steam only, all footage you are seeing is obviously from my PC, recorded using OBS. I also played a lot of this on my Lenovo Legion Go, and with this game being the most recent release into the Marathon series, and it still being older than me, it ran on my Legion Go without an issue. In Marathon Infinity, a lot happens to say the least, but to boil it down, you once again take control of Mjolnir Recon number 54. As a seemingly unstoppable battleroid, you are tossed around in time to try and reverse what is basically the end of the world, as during the events of the second Marathon game, the Four inadvertently released the Werkhakentur. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. The spelling is bonkers. The Werkhakentur is some form of existence that is basically chaos incarnate. Durandal, who often throws out jokes and sarcasm like it's his day job, had the following to say about the Werkhakentur. Quote, "Things have gone terribly awry. Until now, I thought myself immortal, but I know that is not true. There are things that can destroy me with the ease that I slaughtered the Four naval garrison and the western arm of their battle group 7. But in their final gasp, they used a weapon that I thought they had retired. Even Tycho tried to keep them from using it. Now I fear what that weapon has unleashed will destroy us. I once boasted to be able to count the atoms in a cloud, to understand them all, predict them, and so did I predict you. But this new chaos is entirely terrible, mindless, obeying rules that I don't comprehend, and it is hungry." End quote. So, playing as number 54, you get sent throughout time to explore different timelines and realities to try to find a way to reverse the release of the Werkhakentur. Jesus Christ. I'm going to put the spelling of that on screen so you can see what the hell I'm trying to pronounce here. And that is the perfect transition to talk about this game's story. Prior to playing Marathon Infinity, I was fully aware that the story of this game was near incomprehensible. As my journey into the Marathon world began, I watched a video posted by My Name is Bife, where he broke down the basics of the universe, but never really touched on Infinity. Bife, in his video, when referencing the story of Marathon Infinity, says, quote, "I think Mandalore described it best when he sat there and said there's a special kind of brain poison for it." End quote. So from that point forward, I knew I was in for a wild ride when the time came to play Marathon Infinity. And due to the vague nature of the storytelling in this game, I was pretty lost the entire time. However, the story is actually really not all that complicated, at least on like a basic level. It just needs to be broken down in the right way. And if I'm being honest, I don't think I can do that for you. But worry not, for there is someone who can. After finishing the game, I wanted some clarity on what the hell just happened in this game. So I took to YouTube and watched Hidden Xperia's video on the topic, and he cleared everything up and made it quite easy to understand. So if you are wanting to know the events of Marathon Infinity, I have linked his video below. I highly recommend it. With that being said, although it is the hardest to follow, after watching the Hidden Xperia video, I do think Marathon Infinity has my favorite story of all the games. By far and away, the most happens in this game than either of the other two, and is just much more epic than the other games. Despite the gameplay being so similar amongst them all, the story in all three are so different from one another, and I really enjoyed all of them. But now knowing what goes on in Infinity, I do believe this to be my favorite story of the bunch. However, I would not say this is my favorite game, and that comes down to the level design. Now, none of these games are a shining beacon of level design. In fact, I would say they are the exact opposite. Do not design your levels like the classic Marathon trilogy. But Infinity is probably the worst of the bunch. All three games, they are just very vague in what objective you should be doing, where you should be going, and every room and hallway all look the same in every level. Because of this, I would often get stumped on what to do or where to go, so I would look up video walkthroughs detailing what to do, and that would help me immensely. But in Marathon 1 and 2, I would need to utilize said walkthroughs maybe like, I don't know, 30 to 40% of the levels. However, in Infinity, I would say I did this on like at least 60% of them. I definitely didn't do it on every level, but it certainly felt like I was looking up these walkthroughs every single level of the game. So I personally feel like Marathon Infinity has the worst level design of the bunch here. And lastly, this applies to all three games here, but it really just kind of hit me in this one. A really big quality of life improvement I would have liked to see was the ability to change settings without having to go all the way back to the menu and losing any progress that you made unless you just saved it. While playing the game, if you pause it, you have two options to pick from in the pause menu. You can either quit the game or keep playing it. That's it. So if you adjust some settings in the main menu and you don't like them, you have to fully quit your game, go back to the menu and adjust it there, and then go back and reload your save to feel how the changes and see what the changes were. I'm sure this is relatively accurate to how it was on the original release. I understand that they are probably wanting to preserve the experience here and give you a quote-unquote authentic Marathon playthrough, but there are certain modern day comforts, and I am convinced that they can be added to the game without spoiling the experience, and in fact, improving it. And I feel having a much more expansive pause menu would fall right into that category. And that's about it on this specific game, I guess, and the Marathon series as a whole. If I had to rank them, I would probably put the first game as my overall favorite, since the tone of the game and how ominous it could be really resonated with me much more in this type of setting versus a more arcadey/action vibe. And really that's all just determined by the music in the beginning of the game, because like I said, the similarities between these three games is pretty infinite. Hey, no pun intended there. Also, I can't get over how much better the alien blaster was in the first game, because you get the alien weapon in all three games, but it's far superior in the first game. It was like underwent a huge rework in the second and third one for whatever reason. Then probably Marathon 2 is my second favorite, with Infinity overall honestly being my least favorite, all thanks to the level design. If Infinity had a better level design, I would definitely be putting it above 2, so long as we are counting my opinions of the story after watching the Hidden Xperia video. But it was just so bad in Infinity, dude. It was like the only one where I was like genuinely frustrated, being like, where the hell do I go? But like I said, story-wise, Infinity takes the cake. So what are my final thoughts on the Marathon series? Understanding that these games are 30 years old and what the idea of a game should be back then was much different compared to what it is today, I honestly think a little fondly of them. Make no mistake, the gameplay, level design, and pretty much everything that is not the story of these games aged like milk, if I'm being honest. But I was prepared for that going into it, and knowing that definitely helped ease that burden. But the story of these games and the lore that is within the Marathon universe is honestly some of my favorite I have ever experienced, and it only gets cooler the more I learn about it. Right up there with Fallout and Half-Life universes, genuinely. So if the lore, story, and universe of these games are so good, and the gameplay and stuff is at least on par with other games at the time, why is the Marathon series virtually unknown, or at least it was until Bungie announced their new game? I believe that comes down to the availability and sales of the games, and later on, the popularity of Halo. Let's take the original Doom for instance. It was released in 1993 and was sold as shareware model. So what this means is that id Software, the developers of Doom, allowed game stores to sell only the first episode of the game at any price the game stores deemed fit. Then, when the customer eventually fell in love with the game, they would buy the full thing from id. This likely small investment probably means a lot more people were willing to give the game a try. It is estimated that in the first year alone, Doom sold between 140,000 and 200,000 copies. And then, in the following few years, it was ported to so many other devices after originally releasing on DOS systems. The widespread availability of the game only helped its legend and increased sales as the years went on. And then there's the Marathon series. Marathon Games started out life as a Mac exclusive, and it pretty much stayed that way until the early 2010s when they got ported to iOS. And Macs were and never have been known for their gaming potential, as well as in the mid-90s, Apple was definitely not the tech juggernaut they are today. They were much more niche back in those days, nearly going bankrupt in the 90s actually. 1 and 2 both did see Apple Pippin ports, but if you know about the Apple Pippin, you know how successful that was, and if you don't know about the Apple Pippin, there's a reason why. The only game to see any kind of port outside of the Pippin before the 2010s was Marathon 2, which got ported to Windows in '96 and Xbox 360 in 2007. Marathon 1 and Infinity went portless outside of the Pippin until the iOS ports were released. Because of this, Marathon was viewed as a success with 150,000 units sold by 1995. But sales really slowed down after that, and once Halo came out in 2001, that was the only Bungie game anyone wanted to talk about. It was at the point that in 2002, Marathon 1 sales were still under 200,000, as opposed to Doom 1, which was released 1 year earlier, sold 3.5 million copies by 1999. So because of all that, it seems Marathon got relatively lost to time, remaining unknown to the masses while being survived through the years by a dedicated few. I have played through the original 2 Dooms, and I would rather play any Marathon game than the Doom games. The gameplay is very similar, and I much prefer the story of the Marathon games. After playing through the original games, I am even more excited for the new one. Knowing the history behind the series and this world is honestly so cool. I am fully open to this game being bad. I am not ruling that possibility out, especially with the recent headlines about Bungie, and I know the new game isn't really a direct sequel and more of a standalone experience, taking place between 2 and Infinity. At least I believe that to be true. No idea which timeline it is though. Watch the Hidden Xperia video to understand that. However, at the end of the day, it is the first chance to explore the world of Marathon in a new light in about 30 years. Which myself, as well as many other dedicated fans out there, will happily take given the time gap between these releases. Although Marathon is expected to drop sometime in 2025, there is no set release date, and delays are most definitely a possibility. But no matter when the game drops, rest assured, I'll be unpacking the game from my local Chris as soon as it arrives. Well, there you have it, the Marathon series. Genuinely enjoyed my time with this trilogy and getting to know this world, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty glad I don't plan on playing another older game like this. There's so many modern gaming comforts I have grown accustomed to, and sometimes it's hard to live without them, we'll say. Just like it is hard to live without you, viewer. Thank you so much for your time and attention watching this video. I appreciate it so much. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Small click for you goes a long way for us here at Milkman Media. Next, as I mentioned in my Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 video, link in the description for that, I will be tackling the Plucky Squire. It seems like a solid little game, so I figured I'd give it a try. So make sure you subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss that, along with any other gaming or food videos I put out. Lastly, let's talk Marathon or Bungie in the comments. I could talk about Marathon until the cows come home, so I would love to have some conversations about it down below. And lastly, if you want to learn more about the Marathon universe, but understandably don't want to slog through 30-year-old video games, I have linked the Byte video I mentioned, the Hidden Xperia video on Infinity, as well as Hidden Xperia's video on the story of the other 2 games as well. They are all top notch and I highly recommend watching all of them. Got a lot of links in the description for this one, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, isn't it? I'll talk to you guys in the comments for now, but as always, I'll see you in the next one.